Good afternoon. We're about to get started, so if I can get your attention, that'd be great. My name is Brian Steed. I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Natural Resources for the state of Utah. Really, I'm grateful to see you all here today for a really important message. State's bracing for probably one of the worst fire seasons, if not the worst fire season on record. We have uncharacteristically dry conditions, and we are heading into what is traditionally the activity. Come on over, it'll be fun. In looking at the tinderbox conditions that we've got, it's really on all of us to make sure that we're safe. And we're here to present a unified message on behalf of all the fire agencies of the state that indeed we can do better and that we need to do better. Let me make some introductions before we go too far. From the Department of Natural Resources, we've got Brett Osler. Brett, are you? There you go. Nice. From the U.S. Forest Service, Ben Newbern. From the BLM, Greg Sheehan. From the National Park Service, Brandon Flynn from Golden Spike. Hey, Brandon. He's the one with the great hat. From the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Eric Haberstick. From the Unified Fire Authority, we have Dustin Dean, the Chief of Operations. From the Salt Lake City Fire Department, we have Carl Lieb and Anthony Burton. And from Predictive Services, we have Basil Numerzicki. And last but not least, we have Governor Spencer Cox here. With that, I'm just going to turn the time over to the governor to kick us off. Governor, thank you so much for your willingness to be here today, and thank you so much for the care and attention you give to the state. Please.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks to all of our partners who are here with us today. Special thanks to the media for joining us. We really wanted to start early this year and shine a spotlight on what, as Director Steed just mentioned, is likely to be one of the worst fire seasons that we've seen. Of course, a lot of that has to depend on the weather here going on, but where we are and where we're starting from is not good. It's no secret that we're facing one of the driest years that we've had. What I saw yesterday is so far, at least this last water year, was the second driest on record for our state. So we're starting from a deficit, and that's not good. 100% of the state of Utah is in drought conditions right now, and 90% of the state is in extreme drought conditions right now. I was talking to a friend in one of our water districts. They're 20% of normal right now, and that's not, I mean, it is abnormal, but that's true across the state. We're seeing many places that are at 20% or lower for the water year to start things off. So far, we have already had 227 wildfires that have burned more than 8,400 acres. Now, that's well above average for this time of year. But the sad part, and not surprising, is that 219 of those 227 wildfires were human caused, and that's why we're here today. All but 8 of them were completely preventable. Every human-caused wildfire is a wildfire that doesn't have to happen. And as a state, we just can't afford to keep doing things the way we're doing it when it comes to the outdoors and fire danger. We are the fastest growing state, and when we add more people here, that increases the odds of someone starting a fire. The overwhelming majority of Utah wildfires are carelessly started and 100% preventable. So anyone can inadvertently start a fire, and I'm asking all Utahns, I'm begging all Utahns right now to do their part to prevent wildfires. As in response and as part of this effort, we are launching a new education campaign called Fire Sense. You'll see that on the stickers on some of our vehicles right now. Brian Steed will explain more about what this is, but Fire Sense, what it really means is taking extra precautions. Anytime you're outdoors, thinking twice about what it is you're doing and if what you're doing could potentially cause a wildfire, even things that you sometimes don't think about. It's about refusing to park a vehicle, a hot vehicle on dry grass. Just pulling over onto dry grass with a hot vehicle underneath can start a wildfire. It's keeping campfires in the ring and always having an extinguisher on hand. And it's not having campfires in places where campfires aren't allowed. And we're going to have lots of those places very soon and in the coming months. It's refusing to ever leave a campfire unattended and making sure that that campfire is completely out before we leave. It's choosing to shoot at an indoor range instead of outdoors. I love to shoot. My family loves to shoot. It's what we do. But target shooting is one of the leading causes of some of the worst wildfires we've had in our state's history, and it will happen again if we're not more careful and we don't. And we should shoot at indoor ranges instead of outdoor during these dry months. And it's double checking your trailer chains. This is a very common one. You've hooked up your trailer. You're heading off for the weekend, and you've got one chain that's dragging, and those sparks can certainly light a fire. And all the other things we talked about, extinguishing your cigarettes, not throwing them out, being careful with fireworks. We'll evaluate fireworks as we get closer to fireworks season, but understanding where and when it's appropriate to light fireworks. All of these things can prevent unnecessary wildfire and endanger our communities. And so I encourage all Utahns to enjoy our beautiful outdoors, people that are coming from out of state to enjoy what makes Utah so special. But I'm just asking you to think twice and to please be careful. And with that, I'll turn the microphone back over to Director Steve.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda, we have Basil Numerzicki, and I'm pretty sure I massacred his name. So you can tell us how actually to pronounce. Basil.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Basil Numerzicki. I'm a lead meteorologist with Predictive Services, also with the BLM. It is our office's job to produce the fire season outlooks, which are 4-month outlooks that we typically issue on the first of every month. We're actually really busy working on the final touches for our new update, and one of my meteorologists who's actually working on it gave me the unofficial map for September, which isn't posted yet, but we're pretty much finalized. And actually, I couldn't get it on here, but I'll talk about it a little bit. As the governor had mentioned, the drought, the big story this year, extreme drought covering 90% or more of the state. And there's actually, believe it or not, a higher category. There is exceptional drought. And we only see that maybe once or twice a decade in the history of the drought monitor, which I believe it's the third decade of it already. And the 2 or 3 previous times it leered its ugly head, it only covered maybe 5 or 10% of the state real briefly. But this year so far, in the spring, in May, it's covering almost 80% of the state. So if you look at the first graphic through there, there is the red, and then you actually see a dark red covering about the southern 2/3 of the state. We've never had that much exceptional level of drought in the state ever. And when our worst periods of the drought are typically August or September before the fall rains arrive. To have this in the spring is truly exceptional because it's going to get much worse before it gets better. Another exceptional thing we've already seen, I believe the governor also mentioned, was the unseasonably large number of wildfires already that we had with this drought in mid-March through April into May. It's not unusual to get a 10, 30, 50 acre fire in some dormant brush. It is unheard of to get several fires of a couple of hundred to even a couple of thousand acres in March and April, and that's what we got. We have a bit of a normal reprieve. We have green up going on, so the grasses are greened up, the brush has greened up. If you look around, you see the brightness in there, and that buys us a couple of weeks. That is normal, but even the green up is below normal, and especially in the southern part of the state. That green up started weak and is fading fast already, several weeks ahead of schedule. Our fuels that we measure how dry it is to be conducive to wildfire, they are already at mid to late June levels. So the rain and the moisture that we received last week has bought us a couple of days, but starting next week probably, we're going to be full on into it. So without further ado, the next chart you see for June 2021, you basically see the entire state immersed in above normal large fire potential. Large fires we typically define as 100 acres or more, and quite frequently with wind, they easily go into the thousands of acres. June is typically the worst month of fire season in Utah. So a normal June would be normally bad, but to have above normal is truly bad. What's probably going to happen, looking at the latest climate models are going out a week or two, and our current state of the fuels, it'll probably start off bad in the southern third of the state, basically Highway 50 on southwards as early as next week, and probably by June 8th, June 10th or 12th, it'll rapidly spread up northwards this way, and so that's something we have to brace for. The second map that you see is July. You see that threat continues for most of Utah, actually pushes up into neighboring eastern Idaho. The one silver lining that we do have is, you notice on the bottom part of the map, far southern Utah that extends into parts of the Arizona Strip and southern Nevada. That goes back to normal, and the reasoning for that was the expectation that this year would be the first in a couple of years that we might actually have an above normal monsoon season. A big part of this drought was the lack of monsoon in, I believe, 2 out of the last 3 years and 3 out of the last 4 or 5. And some researchers are pondering whether that's a climatic shift based on climate change. I won't get into that now, but I will get into that. I spoke with some of these climate folks again in the last 24 hours, and they're not as robust on having that monsoonal relief as they were about a month ago. So we'll have to brace for that as well if that happens. Usually the monsoon comes in early to mid-July across the southern third of the state, eventually working up towards maybe 2/3 of Utah, sometimes even the entire state, and gets us 8 out of 10 days of rain, 12 out of 20 days of rain, and takes the edge off of fire season, at least for southern areas. We're still thinking we're going to have a more of an average monsoon, which will be better than we've had the past couple of years, but that's what we really need to at least help save the southern third of the state, because if we don't get that, it's going to be off the charts. As we go into August, by that time, even if it's a below average monsoon, it should still buy enough to moisten up the fuels in the southern half of the state. But here in the north of Highway 50, along and east of along and west of the Wasatch, it's still expected to be critically dry. We typically don't get much moisture through here. So as dry as we are, as bad as the drought is, those fuels are going to become more critical. And I'm very likely by midsummer, by July, we're probably going to see all-time record dry levels in all of our fine to heavier fuels in the forest. So it's what we're bracing for. The expectation is that for September, we'll still have above average in the north, but there's still a lot of give and take for September. But we really have to get through these first 3 core months of June, July, and August. So those are our outlooks. The new ones will be published on June 1st, the first of every month. I don't want to give a complex URL, but if you do a search on Great Basin Coordination Center, it'll get you to our webpage. If you click the outlooks, you'll be able to find the products out there. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Basil, and I apologize for massacring your name before. As can be noted, we're in bad conditions, and we're not predicting it to get a lot better. Everyone here has a responsibility of preserving the resources of the state. When last year happened, we had over 80% of the fires that we had statewide were human-caused. Each one of those could have been preventable had people exercised just a little more care. And so that's over 1,200 wildfires statewide last year that could have been prevented. As the governor mentioned, today we're rolling out the statewide awareness effort called Fire Sense. We chose Fire Sense because it's a lot like common sense, that it doesn't take that much to do a little bit more to prevent catastrophic wildfire. It's encouraged to educate, remind, and encourage others and everyone that current behaviors need to change. And so you're going to see around the state Fire Sense ads on billboards, on the web, on social media, on retail locations, and it's going to remind all of us that we can be better prepared. As the governor mentioned, there are certain simple behaviors that we can do. If you're target shooting, do so safely. Examine what type of ammunition you're using. Check out current conditions, and if it's going to be a red flag day, don't go target shooting outdoors. And if you can, as the governor mentioned, shoot indoors. Don't use exploding targets. They're illegal on all public lands, in the state, and they have been a cause of a startling number of fires statewide. And so it's something that we can do to change that behavior. Campfires. Keep your fires a manageable size. Never leave a fire unattended. Extinguish campfires using the drown, stir, and feel method, meaning actually feel to see if it's still hot before you leave it. And last but not least, equipment. An enormous number of fires are started each year just by people not exercising appropriate care and the equipment they're using. So whether you're working or recreating, traveling, be aware that equipment can and often does cause a fire. So be mindful of your surroundings. As the governor mentioned, if you're pulling off because of car trouble, don't pull off a warm car that you've been driving for 2 hours onto a bunch of dry grass. That likely will start a fire. Make sure your chains are well secured before you travel, and never drive or park on dry vegetation. It's just a recipe for disaster. And I guess that doesn't need to be said, but it'll be said. On debris burning, if you are burning, check conditions. Check what the local officials are saying about whether that's even allowed behavior, and if it's not allowed, don't do it. So check fire restrictions currently. Watch for red flag warnings. And if I can just close, we live in a remarkable state. It's beautiful. And so please, Utah, take these precautions seriously. We are all in this together. Utah is tinder dry right now. We don't predict that's going to get better. Please help us not to burn the state down. Thank you so much. We have all these experts on hand that can answer questions, and they'll be available. So please, if you have further follow-up questions, please let us know. And thank you again so much for your attendance here today. Thanks.